The Joburg Crisis Alliance will march to the Johannesburg Metro offices tomorrow. The protest is part of the growing calls for Johannesburg Mayor Kabelo Gwamada to step down. Joining us now is Zaakirah Vadi, who is the Executive Director of Defend Our Democracy. Zaakirah, thank you so much for your time and for joining us this evening. Just let us know, how does your organization assess the mayor's performance and his leadership in addressing key issues such as service delivery, transparency and accountability in the city of Johannesburg? And what are your primary concerns that have prompted for this call?
Well, at the moment, I think we are all quite concerned about the state of the city of Johannesburg. If you look at the issue of the 230 rand tariff that has been imposed on residents without much consultation, without real understanding on how it impacts the lives of ordinary residents, that's something that has been of huge concern to us. If we look at load reduction that's unplanned, water outages throughout the city of Johannesburg, sometimes residents going without water for weeks on end. And then you look at just the state of roads, robots, Bree Street still hasn't been fixed. And you look at all of these issues cumulatively, and it begins to paint a very bleak picture of the city of Johannesburg, which is indicative of the state of its leadership as well.
I mean, the mayor has responded to the calls of these society groups asking for his head as a mayor. And he says he's targeted because he's a black child and he's being blamed for old infrastructure that should have been changed before his tenure. What's your response to that?
Well, the response is twofold. The first is that we are not the first that have called for Mayor Gwamada to go. In fact, about 12 days into his tenure as mayor, COSATU was the first organization that called for him to go. And the number of organizations that have made this call subsequently come from a diverse range of communities across Johannesburg. So it certainly isn't a racially motivated or a very personal attack on Mayor Gwamada himself. It's really about his leadership, the inability to deal with the problems facing Johannesburg. And it's not just about his person, it's about the entire mayoral committee as well, who need to step down along with him. The second thing is that Mayor Gwamada, presides over a city with about an 83 billion rand budget. And for someone who's within this position, who is a 39-year-old adult, to respond to these issues in this immature way is certainly worrying. So I think those are the two things that we would like to highlight in terms of his response. He really needs to give us answers in terms of the substance of the questions that we are putting forward to the city about the state of the city, the state of the administration. The second part that we want to address is really the instability in the city of Johannesburg over the last decade. Certainly, Mayor Gwamada has inherited a range of issues before his tenure, but we expect a leader who is facing the crisis that the city of ours is facing to deal with it with far more urgency, far more efficiency, and I think a greater sense of empathy about what residents are going through. And in his 1 year in office thus far, Mayor Gwamada certainly has demonstrated that.
Have there been any engagements with the mayor in this 1 year that he's been in office? And what do you believe that his continued tenure in office may impact the well-being of residents and the efficiency of municipal operations, as well as just the overall trust in local government institutions in the city?
Well, not directly with our organization, but one of our partner organizations who is part of this Joburg Crisis Alliance is the Water Gang. And they certainly tried to have a meeting together with him, Brand Water, and a number of other organizations. And from what we've heard from them, the response was that on the day that this meeting was taking place, addressing one of the most serious challenges that the city is facing, the mayor was instead opening apparently a golf course or something of the sort, and again demonstrating a lack of urgency in dealing with the crisis that's unfolding in the city at the moment. So that has been the response thus far. We have reached out as a group to the presidency to try and intervene and address some of the challenges facing the city, but we haven't had, I think, a response that gives us a sense of comfort that there is a willingness and a sense of urgency to deal with the issues that we're facing.
I mean, you made mention of the prepaid electricity tariffs that are an issue of concern for your organization. Have you engaged with local communities and stakeholders with regards to where they stand in terms of raising awareness about some of the issues that impact them directly in relation to the mayor?
You know, we've been hearing stories about residents. If you take journalist Feral Hafferty, who's conducted a set of interviews with residents from very elderly people living in the Claremont area at some of the homes that are based there. And people, they have been indicating that they now have to make a choice between having food for the day or putting on the geyser for the day. Others are saying that they are unable to even have a cup of coffee in this cold weather because boiling the kettle means taking more electricity. And when they go and buy their units of electricity, it first takes off an amount for the surcharge before even getting to the amount paid for the actual electricity. From what we know, that there are many more indigent households within the city of Johannesburg that have been exempt from the surcharge. And it's something that the city does need to review. There have been indications that there's a willingness now to begin looking at it, but it shouldn't have been imposed in this way on residents in the first place.
I mean, the council met yesterday in order to approve the 2.5 billion rand loan that the city has secured in order for it to improve service delivery. Do you believe that these funds will assist with regards to the issues that you raised earlier on that the residents of the city of Johannesburg are facing, and possibly not necessarily what the mayor could or could not do, but what these funds could assist in terms of service delivery?
It's yet to be seen how the city is going to manage this amount once it comes through. We would need to look at what are the details of this loan. I'm not aware as yet of what are the specifics around the agreement. So it's something that a number of organizations who are part of this Crisis Alliance will have to look at, review, and very carefully monitor so that there's no wasteful expenditure, there's no corruption that goes with it as well. From what I understand, it is a loan that needs to be paid back over a number of years. And ultimately, once again, it's really residents of Johannesburg that are going to be footing the bill once again. So it's something we need to have a great deal of transparency and accountability from representatives in government over.
So, I mean, as civil society organizations, you will be gathering to march. What role do you believe you play in promoting transparency and oversight in local governance, and just how these organizations like yours put in the efforts to strengthen democracy and integrity?
So the first thing here is really that there is a need for political accountability. Politicians always come with an excuse, or often come with an excuse, that they are not responsible because it's some administrator at a lower level that hasn't done their work. But ultimately, there's something called political accountability. And when we see failure at the extent that we see it at the moment in the city of Johannesburg, there needs to be a strong message sent that the citizens or the residents of Johannesburg are not going to tolerate this level of inefficiency, of inaptitude that we're seeing on display. So that's the first thing in terms of accountability. Secondly, I think that there does need to be a critique on organizations and the level of accountability exercised at the municipal level. We certainly need to play a greater role in terms of budget oversight, in terms of rallying communities to be more involved in understanding how the city works and where accountability rests on different issues. And the third thing that we would like to see is a greater level of interaction between the city of Johannesburg, its political leadership, its officials, and representatives from different organizations, different stakeholders, be it from labor, business, the faith-based institutions and others, to show that we're not just there to simply criticize, but we're also there to help where there is a need to help. We're also there to lend a hand and support where there are initiatives that we can do so as well. So it's a bit of both. I think accountability has both the oversight role, but also requires the active involvement of the residents of Johannesburg.
And it's very interesting that you should say that. I mean, we've had 8 mayors in the city of Johannesburg in the last 2 years. How do you address concerns about the potential impact of your call for the mayor's resignation on political stability, public perceptions, and just the functioning of local government structures in the city? And what safeguards do you advocate for in ensuring a smooth transition and continuity of services?
So we know that the issue of instability has been a huge problem for the city of Johannesburg, but that's something that's really been the responsibility of the political parties and the jostling for power, jostling for positions within the mayoral committee and the position of mayor itself. So I think first to bear responsibility for the state of instability in Johannesburg is really to be put at the door of political parties. But secondly, in terms of this call, it doesn't mean when there is someone who has failed at their job or is not doing, something well, that they shouldn't be held accountable for it, and we shouldn't ask them to step down simply in the interest of some sort of a flimsy coalition holding or being in place. When that coalition is unable to deliver to the citizens of Johannesburg, or when that leadership is unable to deliver, then there needs to be a sense of accountability for it. And that's part of the call that we are making. We are saying that we can't say which political party or who must come into power to be the next mayor of Johannesburg if Mayor Gwamada does step down. That's something really for those who are elected into office, more than 200 members of the legislature that are there to put their minds to and to select an individual and a mayoral committee that is best represented of the voters of Johannesburg and who are up to the task of fixing the city.
All right, Zaakirah, thank you so much for your time and for joining us this evening. That's Zaakirah Vadi, who's the Executive Director for Defend Our Democracy.